She arrived before the music, before the jazz trio struck its first note, before the crystal caught the light just right. Before the maitre d' could even fake a welcoming smile, she was already there. Not late, not early, just exact, just deliberate. Her name was Nia Brooks, and she wasn't the type you forget. Black, elegant, the kind of woman who made silence shift when she entered a room. She wore a deep sapphire dress that whispered with each step, heels that didn't ask for attention but always received it, and a calm expression not neutral, but loaded, like the sea before a storm. And yet, on that Friday night in one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, Nia Brooks was invisible. Not because she lacked presence, but because the system polished and perfumed as it was refused to see her. They saw her skin, not her credentials. They saw her hair, not her history. They saw her as a question, not as a guest. The hostess blinked twice too long. The reservation suddenly couldn't be found. The table that had her name on it was mistakenly reassigned, and with every smile that followed, it became clearer this wasn't an accident. This wasn't poor management. This was coded racism wrapped in etiquette. But Nia, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't leave. She stayed, sat, watched, documented. Because this wasn't her first time being treated as less, and it wouldn't be the last. What they didn't know, this wasn't just another black woman walking into dinner. This was an undercover observer, planted with purpose. And tonight, the truth about this restaurant, its standards, its prejudices, its polished facade was about to be exposed. If you believe in stories that speak without shouting, if you've ever walked into a room and been judged before a single word left your mouth, then this one's for you. Like, share, subscribe. Let's keep bringing light to the places built to hide in darkness. Now, let's go back to the exact moment Nia stepped out of the black car, heels touching the curb like punctuation at the end of a powerful sentence. A reservation confirmed, a smile rehearsed. A night that was supposed to be about celebration, not confrontation. The smile hit her before the door even closed behind her. Not a warm smile, not the kind that invites you in or says, "We've been expecting you." No, this smile had corners. It was too fast, too tight, like someone trying to suppress a wince but forgetting to tuck it all the way back. It came from the hostess, white, maybe 30, sleek bun, blazer too small across the shoulders. She looked like the kind of woman who had perfected the art of telling people no without ever saying the word. Nia Brooks, standing tall in midnight blue silk, handed over her name like a key. Reservation for Brooks, 7 o'clock, window seat. The hostess tapped at her screen without really looking. Then came the pause, the slight furrow in her brows, the quick glance up not at Nia's eyes, but at her neckline, her braids, her skin. Then, I'm not seeing anything under that name. Are you sure it was for tonight? Nia didn't blink. She knew this dance. She pulled out her phone, opened the confirmation email, and turned the screen toward the hostess like an offering. Confirmed. 7. Window. The woman didn't even lean forward, just gave a small laugh, brittle and bright. Right. Okay. Just give me a second. I'll check with the floor manager. She disappeared. Nia stood still, alone in a lobby of orchids and cream marble, her reflection stretching long in the glass wall beside her. 2 men, white, cufflinks glinting, voices loud, walked in behind her. Evening. Gentlemen, do you have a reservation? No. We're just hoping to get lucky. Oh. I'm sure we can find something for you. Right this way. Nia turned. She watched the 3 of them walk past her, their laughter trailing behind like an aftershave ad. She wasn't invisible. She was black, and in that space, that was enough to cancel a reservation. By the time the hostess returned, her voice had shifted, polite, almost chirpy. So, we had a little mix-up. Your table got double booked, but we can seat you near the back patio. Nia raised one eyebrow, not high, just enough. I requested a window seat. The hostess nodded too fast. Of course, it's just, with how busy we are tonight, it may take a bit longer to arrange, if you'd like to wait. I'll wait. The words came soft, but rooted. Because Nia wasn't just waiting for a table. She was waiting for the moment they'd expose themselves. The moment when the shine peeled back to reveal something colder, something racist in its routine, in its polish. And she wouldn't flinch. They gave her a table close enough to the kitchen for the scent of garlic and burnt butter to settle into her skin. Not near the window, not even near the bar, just near. Near the exit, near the swinging doors, near nowhere. Nia sat with her spine straight and her phone face down on the table. The waiter who approached her did not offer his name. His smile looked practiced, too symmetrical to be real. He dropped the menu on the table with a kind of precision that said, "I've done this 1,000 times." And yet, he said nothing. "No, good evening. No, would you like sparkling or still just nothing?" Nia waited. 3 minutes, 7, 12. A couple seated at the table next to hers, white, dressed casually, received menus, water, and cocktails within 5. Their server laughed with them, told them which dessert was his favorite. At minute 13, Nia looked up. The waiter was leaning on the host stand, scrolling through his phone. A young woman, another server, pointed discreetly toward Nia's table. He shrugged. She stood, walked to the host stand, waited until both of them looked at her. Then, clearly, "Excuse me, has my server been assigned?" The young woman blinked. The man replied without lifting his gaze. "We're short-staffed. Someone will be with you shortly." Nia smiled, not because anything was funny, because the moment had arrived. That moment where the script breaks, where the truth creeps in through the cracks. "I've been here for 13 minutes. That's not short-staffed. That's selective service." The woman flushed. The man said, "Louder, ma'am. If you're going to cause a scene, we'll have to ask you to leave." There it was, the red flag dressed in white napkins. Not the mistake, but the accusation. Not the oversight, but the implication. Not "we're sorry, no, but you're difficult." The entire dining room shifted in that moment. Chairs stilled, glasses froze mid-air. Every eye suddenly remembered she was there. Nia stepped back, gently, sat down again, crossed her legs, and with a voice that could cut silk, "I won't cause a scene. I'll build one, brick by brick." She tapped the voice recorder on her phone, laid it gently next to her glass, and whispered to herself, "Keep talking." Because when you're black and female and poised, the world assumes you'll either break or beg, but sometimes all you need to do is press record. She was supposed to be meeting someone. That was the story the staff had clung to, the reason they could stall, the reason they could justify giving her the worst table in the room. A woman dining alone. In this place, the implication lingered in every half-smile, in every delayed glance. She doesn't belong. She must be waiting for someone who does. But the guest wasn't coming. There was no guest. There never was. The wine list arrived, finally slid across the table like an apology no one meant. The waiter's hands didn't tremble, but his eyes darted. Nia opened the menu slowly, more for effect than for choice. She wasn't there for dinner. She was there for data. She noted the sequence, how long it took them to seat her, how quickly they approached the couple next to her, how often the staff checked in on white patrons versus her. She counted the wine stains on the edge of her tablecloth, the flicker in the hostess's face every time their eyes met, the slow, deliberate pace of performative politeness. And through it all, Nia never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Because she wasn't just a guest. She was undercover. She had been hired discreetly, strategically, by a civil equity fund evaluating luxury establishments that received diversity grants. This restaurant, it had bragged in glossy press releases about their inclusion training and diverse hiring practices. But paper values don't always pour into the wine glass. A man from 2 tables away stood to leave. He paused near her table and said, half joking, "You have the patience of a monk. I would have left 20 minutes ago." Nia didn't smile. She looked up, squarely. "That's because you've never had to prove you deserve to stay." He opened his mouth, closed it, nodded. Silence can be an education. Nia turned her phone face up again. A message blinked from her contact at the firm recording started. She texted back loud and clear. Then she folded the menu, straightened her spine, lifted her chin just enough for the room to feel it. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't complain. She would remember everything. And when the report was written, when the numbers were tallied, when the grant was frozen and the investors were alerted, this restaurant would learn what it felt like to be seen. Not watched, seen. Because when you're a black woman with receipts not just literal, but cultural, historical, statistical, you don't need an entourage. You don't need a scene. You just need the moment. And tonight, Nia Brooks had it. There was something off about the air. Not the scent, the rosemary smoke from the lamb, the browned butter from the risotto. No. That was perfect. Flawless. Like always. But something deeper. Heavier. Like the moment before a speaker buzzes with feedback. Devin, the assistant manager, noticed it first. He was walking toward the back bar with 2 menus in hand when he caught sight of her. The black woman at table 16. Still seated. Still alone. Still composed. Too composed. He'd seen frustration before. Embarrassment. Anger. Even none of those lived on her face. What lived there was precision. That kind of calm that made people nervous, even if they didn't know why. He looked at his staff, the nervous shuffle of the hostess avoiding eye contact, the tight grip of the waiter on his tray, the silent glance from the sommelier. Something was happening, and no one wanted to name it. He walked past her table once, pretending to check the lighting. Her phone was face up. The red circle on the screen told him everything. She was recording. Devin's chest tightened. The restaurant had recently accepted funding from a national equity initiative. Part of the deal meant surprise audits, undercover evaluations by hired professionals. It was supposed to be random, rare, nothing to worry about. Until now. He doubled back to the host stand. Whispered, "Tell me everything that's happened with that table." The hostess Lauren fumbled. "She was late, I think. Or the system glitched. I offered to seat her in the meantime." "Did you offer her a drink?" "Well, no. We weren't sure if she—" Devin closed his eyes briefly. That pause said too much. "Did you card her?" Lauren hesitated. "Well, she asked for wine. I just followed protocol." "Do you card every white guest in a business suit?" No answer, just the hum of guilt. Devin inhaled through his nose. This wasn't an incident. Not yet. But it was something worse. A pattern, subtle, silent, stitched into behavior. The kind that doesn't make headlines. The kind that makes reports. And he had a sinking feeling this woman didn't just have a reservation. She had a purpose. The waiter returned. His stride had shortened, as if the floor itself were pulling him back. He placed a glass of water on Nia's table finally, but his eyes slid past hers, like he was afraid to look too long, or maybe afraid of what he might see if he did. "Have you decided the words were flat, robotic, the kind used to fill time, not build rapport?" Nia opened the menu again, deliberately slow. Her voice, when it came, was velvet wrapped around something sharp. "Yes, I'll have the truffle carpaccio. No pine nuts. And the vintage Sancerre." The waiter blinked, twice. That dish usually requires a pre-authorization from the sommelier. He was improvising, grasping. Nia didn't flinch. She reached into her purse, pulled out a sleek black card, and placed it gently beside the menu. "This should cover your doubts." A pause, not long, just heavy. He took the card and walked away like it weighed more than plastic should. Across the room, Devon watched the exchange. Something about the way she placed that card, it wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to impress. It was surgical. He pulled out his phone and opened the staff service app. Searched her name from the reservation system. Nia Brooks. Nothing screamed VIP. No special flags. No bold alerts. And yet, the way she moved. The way she looked at people, not through them. Not around them. But into them, like she was reading margins they couldn't see. It made him nervous. Meanwhile, at table 16, Nia took out a slim notebook. Not her phone, not a laptop. Just a small, leather-bound journal with a ribbon marker. She opened it and began writing. Not rushed, not distracted. Just precise. Each note a tally, each silence a sentence. A couple nearby whispered, wondering aloud why she hadn't been served sooner. Maybe she's one of those difficult types, the woman said, sipping her martini. Nia heard. She didn't react. She wrote another line in her book. Difficult. The word they use when black women don't apologize for existing. The waiter returned with her wine, poured it clumsily. No tasting ritual. No explanation of vintage. Just liquid in glass. Nia swirled it, took a sip, looked up. This isn't the bottle I ordered. The waiter paled. It's what we had open. But not what I requested. Her tone never changed, but the air did. She wasn't angry. She was anchoring. The kind of stillness that makes others tremble. Because when you're up against a system designed to stay clean, sometimes the most powerful act is to catch it red-handed, with a smile still on its face. He hadn't meant to stop. Jordan, a junior server, early 20s. Black. Soft-spoken. Too smart to speak his mind. Too tired not to feel it, had been clearing plates at table 9 when he noticed the pause. Not in the kitchen, not in the music, in the room. There she was, table 16, alone, unbothered, but unserved. Her presence didn't demand attention. It absorbed it, like gravity, the kind of stillness that draws orbit. He recognized the look on her face. He had worn it himself, more times than he cared to count. The look that says, I know what you're doing, and I won't hand you the satisfaction of reacting. It was armor, beautiful and exhausting. He finished his tray and veered slightly off course, a calculated detour. He passed by her table, just close enough to speak without being seen. Miss Lowe, just for her. Did they bring your appetizer? Nia looked up. His name tag said Jordan. His eyes said something else. Recognition. Respect. No, she said, but I didn't forget I ordered it. A flicker of a smile passed between them. Not warmth. Understanding. He nodded once. That was all. Then turned sharply and vanished into the kitchen. Nia let the moment settle. Across the room, Devon saw it. The silent exchange. The shift. He couldn't hear what was said, but he could feel it like a current changing direction. Something was happening. Not dramatic, not loud, but irreversible. Inside the kitchen, Jordan didn't ask permission. He plated the truffle carpaccio himself, sprinkled the shaved parmesan, skipped the pine nuts just like she asked. He walked it to the pass, gave no explanation. The head chef stared at him. That for table 916, Jordan said, eyes steady. I thought Rob was handling that. He was, Jordan replied. Now I am. No one stopped him. He returned to the dining room and placed the plate in front of her. Perfect placement, no flourish, no apology. Just a simple statement, your order, miss. Nia didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The nod she gave him said more, I see you too. Sometimes solidarity isn't loud. It doesn't chant or march or break glass. Sometimes it walks softly, carries a tray, and does the right thing when no one is watching. Sometimes it looks like a black man refusing to be complicit. And in that small act, something shifted, not in the room, in the story. Nia picked up her fork, and somewhere, far from the linen and lighting, a report began to write itself. The door opened again. This time, they noticed. He walked in like he'd done it 100 times, crisp blazer, confident gait, Salt and pepper hair styled just messy enough to signal expensive ease. A white man, early 40s, handsome in the way boardrooms approve of. And the staff shifted, not visibly, but something tightened. Backs straightened, eyes snapped alert. The hostess perked up. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" He smiled, leaned in slightly. "I'm hoping you can find me a table. Just one. I'm in town for the week. Thought I'd treat myself." The flirt in his voice was light, casual, the charm of someone used to getting a yes. And of course he got it. "Absolutely. Right this way." They seated him near the window. Nia saw the entire exchange. Her fork paused midair. She didn't move, didn't speak. But her eyes sharp. Knowing followed him to his seat like a camera lens focusing. Because she knew him. Daniel Mercer, senior partner, strategy team, same firm, same initiative, same investment portfolio. And absolutely, undeniably clueless. He didn't see her, not yet. He was too busy being comfortable, too used to being in rooms that bent around him. From her table, tucked by the wall. Nia watched as he received a menu, a wine list, a full introduction from the sommelier. Within 3 minutes, a glass of Barolo landed on his table. She glanced at her own untouched glass, the wrong bottle, the wrong vintage, and smiled, not with joy, with certainty. This was it, her control group. Same restaurant, same night, different skin. She reached for her phone and opened the camera app. Just one still shot, no flash, no sound. The caption in her mind wrote itself, "Observation table by the window. White male. No reservation. Full service in under 3 minutes. Control activated." And then Daniel saw her. His eyes lit up, surprised, delighted. "Nia," he called across the room. Heads turned. Nia didn't flinch. She placed her fork down, wiped her lips with her napkin, turned slowly. "Evening, Daniel." He stood, already stepping toward her table. "I didn't know you were in town. We should have synced up. Are you here on firm business?" Nia met his gaze, calm, composed. You could say that. Because what she didn't say, not yet, was this. He just walked into her experiment. And soon, he'd help her prove everything. Daniel sat across from her now, wine glass in hand, shoes crossed at the ankle like he'd just stumbled into a college reunion. "Honestly," he said between sips, "this place is phenomenal. Didn't even need a reservation, they practically rolled out the carpet." He laughed, leaned back. "So what brings you to this side of town? Still doing recon for the equity project?" The word floated, too loud. "Recon?" Nia didn't blink. She saw the ripple before it even touched the edges of the room. Behind Daniel, the hostess stiffened. A server turned his head, slowly, as if trying not to. The head chef, visible through the kitchen pass, stepped closer to the edge of the window like a shadow testing light. Daniel didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He went on. "I heard we were dispatching evaluators again. The board's really tightening expectations after that scandal in Seattle. People keep saying they're inclusive until a black woman walks in and proves them wrong." He chuckled. "Present company excluded. Obviously." Nia swirled her water. She didn't need to say a word. The damage was done. Not by her, by him. The word had been spoken. The silence it broke was no longer hers to carry. Recon, evaluator, equity project, black woman. Each syllable a blade, and with them, the veil lifted. In the corner, Devon, still at the host stand, closed his service tablet without finishing his note. His throat was dry. His mind raced. She's not just a customer. She's the reason we still have funding. She's the one from the agency. Across the dining floor, the staff moved differently now, not smoother, stiffer. The kind of choreography born from panic, not practice. Daniel finally noticed. He glanced around. "Did I say something?" Nia smiled gently. Not sweet, Not soft. Controlled. Nothing I hadn't already documented. His brow creased. Wait, you're not seriously. She raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence, then leaned forward just enough to whisper, like a secret she wasn't hiding, only offering. Let's be clear, Daniel, you didn't out me. You just confirmed them. Daniel looked around again. The weight of his words had finally settled. He realized he hadn't stepped into a restaurant. He'd walked straight into a case file being written in real time. Nia sipped her water. The wine still sat untouched beside her, a different vintage, a different story. But now everything was exposed. They sent the floor manager first. He approached with the gait of someone rehearsing humility, shoulders slightly lowered, hands clasped at the waist, smile dialed down to corporate sincerity. Ms. Brooks, he began, as if the name had only now acquired weight. I wanted to personally apologize for the confusion earlier. It seems there was a miscommunication with our system. Nia didn't look up from her notebook. She drew a line across the page, paused, then slowly lifted her eyes to his. Which part was the miscommunication? He blinked. Excuse me. Was it the table by the kitchen, the waiter who forgot how to speak, or the wine that wasn't what I ordered? She tilted her head. Or was it the part where a man walked in without a reservation and was seated before me? The manager swallowed. The glint on his tie pin caught the light, a small, accidental spotlight. We hold ourselves to high standards. That experience isn't reflective of our values. That, Nia said softly, is the problem. He didn't understand. Most don't. He heard complaint. She meant pattern. He gestured toward a waiter standing by. We'd be happy to move you to a window seat. Complimentary. Of course. Nia smiled, not kindly. So now the window table is available. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. One that hung in the air like expensive perfume masking rot. At the bar, Daniel watched, unsure if he should intervene or disappear. His presence had triggered the unraveling, and now he was witnessing the system scramble to sew itself back up threadbare and clumsy. The sommelier appeared next, holding a bottle. Ms. Brooks, our sincerest apologies. We've located the correct vintage. Allow me to. She raised a hand. Too late. 2 words, precise, unshakable. You don't serve wine. You serve memory. And I've already tasted what I needed. The sommelier froze, then retreated, quietly, as if her words had stripped something off of him, the illusion of hospitality. Maybe. Devon, from the host stand, watched it all with growing dread. He realized now this wasn't a review. This was an audit of character, and they were failing by instinct. 1 misstep could be forgiven. 3, maybe, but a full sequence. That's how you get exposed. And the worst part, she never raised her voice, never cursed, never threatened. She simply let them perform, and they wrote the report for her. The door to the kitchen swung open, not in panic, but with purpose. Out stepped a man in a pristine chef's jacket, tall, silver-haired, and clean-shaven. The kind of face they print in food magazines, next to truffle foam and stories about culinary philosophy. His name was Chef Langford, and he did not approach like someone used to being questioned. He approached like a man who had been summoned against his will. Ms. Brooks, he said, wiping imaginary flour from his hands. I heard there was an oversight. Oversight, a gentle word, the kind you use when a dessert is forgotten, not a person. Nia didn't stand, didn't uncross her legs. She simply looked at him, still as glass. You must be the artist behind the discrimination, she said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It rang. It stung. Chef Langford exhaled, then offered the kind of nod men give when they know they can't bluff their way through it. Look, he began. I'll admit, the evening hasn't gone as it should have. We take guest experience seriously. Unless the guest is black, Nia cut in, calm as breath. Then it becomes negotiable. He blinked, not in shock but in calculation. It's not about race, he said, rehearsed. It's about systems breaking down. Miscommunication. We're human. Nia leaned forward, just slightly. The light caught her cheekbone. Her voice didn't rise. Chef Langford, may I ask you something? He nodded. If I were white, sitting at this table, in this same dress, with this same reservation, would we be having this conversation? He hesitated, just long enough. I can't answer that. You just did. His lips pressed into a line. Behind him, a junior chef peeked through the swinging door. A hostess pretended to restack menus. The dining room had become an audience, and no one dared to interrupt the scene unfolding under the chandeliers. Chef Langford tried again. Miss Brooks, I hope we can find a way forward. I value your feedback. We're learning every day. Nia's eyes didn't soften, they sharpened. Learning isn't what you do after being caught. Learning is what prevents this in the first place. He exhaled again. Deeper now. She had pierced the center where ego and comfort live. And then she smiled, but not kindly. You serve fine food, chef, but your house has rotten bones. The hallway behind the main dining room was dimly lit, not dark, just hushed, as if even the walls had learned to whisper. A corridor of polished wood and low light, leading to the restrooms, the staff break room, and just beyond that, the service exit. Nia walked it slowly. Not to retreat, not to escape, but to breathe. When you carry yourself like a fortress for hours, eventually you step away not to collapse, but to recalibrate. That's when she saw him again, Jordan. He was standing near the ice machine, checking his phone. His apron was looser now, his posture relaxed. But when he looked up and saw her, he straightened instinctively. Not out of fear, out of reflex, a learned posture in spaces that were never meant for them. She nodded first. He nodded back. A beat passed. Then she spoke, voice low. You all right? He hesitated, then shrugged. A one-shoulder gesture that meant more than it looked. I clock out in 20. I'll be better then. She almost smiled. I meant from earlier. He leaned against the wall, looked down the hallway like he could see beyond it. It's not new, he said, but it still lands. She nodded. She understood. Every black professional knows that duality familiar and wounding. You didn't have to help me, she said. That was a risk. He met her eyes, steady. I wasn't helping you. A pause. I was protecting myself. You just reminded me I could. That hit somewhere she hadn't prepared for. She exhaled, soft and slow. Jordan stepped closer, not invading, just aligning. His voice dropped to something even lower. They don't know who you are, do they? She arched an eyebrow. They will. He nodded. Then, gently, let me know if I should disappear before that. Nia smiled small but full of weight. No, stay. Let them see exactly who stood still while they stumbled. The hallway dimmed a little more as the lights shifted on their automatic timers. But between them, something sparked a brief, silent surge of power. Not victory, but dignity. Shared, quiet, unbreakable. She walked back toward the dining room. And behind her, in that hush of wood and brass, Jordan stood a little taller. Because sometimes being black in places like this means knowing when to speak and when just existing is the loudest truth of all. When she returned to the dining room, it was quieter. Not because the music had stopped, the jazz trio still played, the melody smooth as bourbon, but the energy had shifted. There was a weight in the air now, the kind people feel without knowing why, the kind that comes right before consequences. Nia moved through the room with the calm of someone who had already won, not loudly, not triumphantly, just definitively. She approached her table, gathered her notebook, her phone, her purse, everything in slow, deliberate order. Each movement was a sentence, each glance, a citation. A server approached, hands fluttering nervously. Ms. Brooks, would you like dessert or perhaps? She cut him off with a single look. Not rude, not cold. Final. I've had enough. A few patrons looked up. Most looked away. Daniel, still sitting at the bar, stood halfway unsure if he should follow, apologize, or disappear. He chose none. She didn't look back anyway. As she made her way toward the front, Devon appeared again, this time blocking her path with an apologetic smile and a leather billfold in hand. Of course, tonight's meal is on us, a gesture of goodwill. Nia paused, tilted her head. You still think this is about money? He froze. Miss Brooks, No. Her voice was quiet, dead center. You're not paying me to forget. You're paying to remember. That's the difference. Then she stepped around him. The hostess didn't speak. The sommelier didn't move. Chef Langford was nowhere to be seen. The door opened for her, automatically. Cold air brushed her face like a curtain lifting. Outside, the city moved on as it always did. But something behind her had shifted permanently. In the distance, her car waited. But before stepping in, she turned and took one last look at the restaurant. Its lighting warm, its branding elegant, its silence now guilty. She opened her phone, tapped a secure app, typed one sentence. Observation complete. Compiling for submission. Initial findings suggest disqualifying breach. She didn't need a signature, didn't need a press release. She wasn't there for spectacle. She was undercover, and now she was done. As the car pulled away, the restaurant grew smaller in the glass, but the impact it had only begun to stretch. The cursor blinked, patient and merciless. Nia sat at the walnut desk in her hotel suite, the skyline glowing behind her like a city unaware it was on trial. The room was quiet, but her mind was surgical, not angry, not reactive, just precise. She opened the templated document Field Evaluation Report Equity Funded Establishment, 0049A. She filled in the blanks. Date, time, name of establishment, number of staff observed, total duration, anonymity status maintained. Then came the section that mattered. Behavioral assessment. Her fingers moved deliberately. Upon entry, I was met with an unexplained delay in recognition of reservation. White guests arriving after me were seated promptly, without ID verification or resistance. Hostess made indirect references to dress code, a policy not enforced on visibly underdressed white patrons. Wine order substituted without disclosure. No tasting procedure, no courtesy. She paused, sipped cold chamomile tea, typed again. Multiple microaggressions were observed, including but not limited to delayed service, dismissive tone, gaze aversion, and inconsistent enforcement of policy. Then came the section labeled Significant Incident. She hesitated only briefly, then began. At approximately 7:47 p.m., a senior male staff member informed me that if I were going to cause a scene, I'd be asked to leave. At no point had I raised my voice, disobeyed instructions, or behaved in a disruptive manner. The only observable variable was my identity: black, female, unaccompanied. Staff's language reflected not concern for service, but anxiety of perception and implicit framing of black professionalism as threat. Every sentence built like a legal case, because it was. She attached voice recordings, still photos, a transcript of Daniel Mercer's slip, his unwitting confirmation of her role. Then she arrived at the final box: recommendation. Her fingers hovered, then typed. Revoke funding. Initiate diversity audit across all public-facing staff. Require retraining before any consideration of reinstatement. This was not an error. It was a system. And now, it is exposed. She hit save. In another part of the city, the restaurant was winding down, polishing glass, resetting tables, rehearsing civility. But in her suite, something irreversible had been written. Not revenge, not even punishment. Just the truth sharpened until it cut. It arrived at 6:08 a.m. Subject line: Field Report Submission. Urgent breach of equity standards. Site 0049A. Sent from Nia Brooks to Senior Audit Team. Langston Capital Equity Division. CC Legal Oversight Unit. External Relations. No exclamation marks. No dramatic preambles. Just an attachment. 12 pages long. Titled Observational Findings. Discriminatory Service Patterns. Evidence Embedded. By 6:24 a.m., the PDF had been read by 4 executives. By 6:31 a.m., forwarded to legal. By 6:47 a.m., the fund's head of diversity and partner integrity, Carmen Liu, was on a secured video call with the general counsel. None of them had eaten at the restaurant in question. But after reading the report, they didn't need to. They'd seen enough. Carmen's voice, always calm but never passive, said it plainly. We trusted their training metrics. What she documented, this wasn't a misstep. This was structural negligence. Her deputy nodded, and they got sloppy because she looked like she didn't belong. She was black. That was their algorithm. And now Carmen turned toward the screen. Now they're in violation. She opened the report again, zoomed in on a highlighted section, the moment where the manager threatened to remove Nia for causing a scene when she hadn't even raised her voice. It sat on the page like an indictment, because it was. By 7:15 a.m., the fund's board liaison had scheduled an emergency review. By 8:00 a.m., the restaurant's corporate investors received a hold notice freezing all marketing subsidies and bonus disbursements pending investigation. And by 8:43 a.m., the restaurant's regional director woke to a text that made his stomach drop. Call me. Urgent. Recite 049A. Something's been exposed. That word exposed echoed louder than any accusation. It didn't shout. It revealed. And as it moved from inbox to inbox, it wasn't the volume that caused panic. It was the precision, the documentation, the surgical detail that made excuses impossible. At 9:06 a.m., Carmen sent one final message. To Nia. 3 words. We received it. No congratulations, no applause. Because in this kind of work, success isn't about being praised. It's about being believed, and knowing the system now has no choice but to answer. At 10:02 a.m., the email landed. Subject: urgent notice of provisional funding suspension. Site 0049A. It didn't come from a journalist. It didn't trend on social media. But inside the management office of Maison Verité, the air changed the moment Devin opened it. He read it once, then again, and then a third time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves. They didn't. The funding, the lifeblood of their expansion campaign, their PR blitz, their brand revamp was frozen, effective immediately. Pending formal review into multiple substantiated incidents of racialized misconduct against a guest under protected evaluation. 3 sentences in, his hands were already sweating. Chef Langford entered mid-scroll. Morning. Prep team needs authorization for the new supplier contract. Devin didn't look up. We're under investigation. Langford stopped. Excuse me. Devin turned the screen toward him. The chef read the header, the opening paragraph, the phrase evidence-backed report from a certified undercover equity evaluator, and then the name Nia Brooks. Langford stepped back like he'd touched heat. She was one of them. She was the one, Devin said, his voice thinner now. They stood in silence. Behind the glass, the dining room buzzed with the usual brunch hum, couples laughing over mimosas, cutlery tapping on porcelain, servers weaving between tables with trays. But in the office, the temperature dropped. Lauren, the hostess, walked in, tablet in hand. I think someone from the equity fund just called. They wouldn't say why. Should I? She saw their faces. She stopped. What's happening? Devin inhaled slowly. Do you remember the guest from Friday? The black woman you made? Wait. Lauren flushed. I didn't. It wasn't intentional. It doesn't matter. Langford said, sharp. They're not looking at intentions. They're looking at patterns. You don't get an undercover audit unless they already suspect something. Lauren's mouth opened, then closed. No one blamed each other, not out loud. But blame doesn't need volume. It needs presence. And in that room, it hung like thick perfume. "Do we tell the staff?" Devon asked. Langford rubbed his eyes. "No, not yet. Just tighten everything. No mistakes. Not even small ones." But it was already too late. The mistake had happened long before Friday. It was baked into how they saw certain guests, how they translated black into risk, how they turned policy into pretext. And now the silence was catching up with them with interest. The mirror didn't flinch. It reflected her as it always had, without embellishment, without judgment, just truth. Nia stood in the bathroom of her hotel suite, hands pressed on the marble counter, eyes steady on the woman staring back. Her curls were still pinned, though looser now. Her lipstick had faded to a muted trace. Her expression, unshaken but not untouched. Steam from the shower curled like breath around her. The soft hum of city traffic rose faintly through the double-paned window. Yet in that moment, all of it faded behind a much older sound. A memory. The sound of her mother's voice. She was 8. Sunday morning, getting ready for a school picture. Nia had wanted to wear her favorite red dress, the one with the velvet collar and tiny gold buttons. But her mother paused, looked her over, and said, "They already see you before you speak. Let's make sure what they see doesn't make them stop listening." She hadn't understood then, not fully. But at school, when she smiled too wide in the picture, they told her to soften it. When she raised her hand too often in class, they called her bossy. When she walked too confidently down the hallway, they whispered attitude. And by 12, she had learned to edit herself. Not because she was wrong, but because the world assumed she was. Now, at 28, the same girl stared back at her grown, dressed in silk, and carrying silence like a sword. She whispered into the glass, "You didn't lose your temper. You didn't shrink. You just existed." Loudly. That was the part they couldn't stand. That a black woman sat still and was still seen. She reached up and unpinned her hair. Let it fall naturally, a halo of coils and memory. Not performative, not flattened, just true. Then she picked up her phone, scrolled past the corporate emails, the board messages, the threads of validation. She stopped on one message, unexpected, from an old college friend. "Saw what you did. You reminded me why I walk into rooms differently now. Thank you." Nia smiled. Not because she needed thanks, but because somewhere, someone had remembered who they were through her stillness. She looked back at the mirror. Taller now, not in height, but in presence. Because mirrors don't lie, but sometimes they take years to tell you the truth. The ballroom shimmered in champagne light. Glass clinked. Laughter bounced gently off ceiling arches. Waiters in black and white moved like chess pieces. Name tags glinted across designer lapels. It was the annual Mid-Atlantic Food and Hospitality Innovation Summit, where menus met money, where chefs and investors whispered over amuse-bouches, and where reputations either rose or curdled. Nia moved through the room like a conductor without baton. No need to force attention. Presence did the work. She wore a charcoal wrap dress, minimal jewelry, bold lipstick. Nothing screamed. Everything spoke. A man she barely knew approached to compliment her keynote from last year. Another asked if she was still consulting for Langston Capital. She offered smiles, measured, civil, forgettable. Then came the voice behind her, warm, practiced, weaponized with charm. "You must be Nia Brooks." Nia turned slowly. The woman extended her hand, slim, perfectly manicured, gold cuff bracelet, tan silk blouse, power disguised as ease. "Celeste Warren," the woman said. "Senior VP of Partner Experience at Verite Group. I've heard your name floating around." Nia shook her hand, firm, silent. Celeste smiled wider. "You're with the Equity Initiative, aren't you?" "In some capacity," Nia replied. Celeste laughed like they were already old friends sharing something wicked. "Well, I hope you weren't the one who got stuck reviewing our Charleston property. That team is a mess. I've been putting out fires all week. Nia tilted her head. Just slightly. The kind of gesture that says I already know more than you think. No, she said calmly. I didn't review Charleston. Lucky you. Celeste chuckled. But I do wish we'd gotten a chance to collaborate directly. I admire how you carry yourself. Poised. Observant. Rare qualities these days. There it was. The unintended compliment. Meant to charm. Accidentally confirmed everything. Nia sipped her sparkling water. Poise tends to survive when you've been forced to earn every room you enter. Celeste blinked, then laughed, a half-second too late. Spoken like someone who's seen some things. Nia leaned in ever so slightly. More than I've shared, less than I've noted. The two women held eye contact mirror against mirror. Then Celeste's phone buzzed. A quick glance. Her brow tightened. Excuse me, crisis of the week. She smiled again and disappeared into the crowd. Nia stood still, glass in hand, unmoved, unspoken, unmistakably black, and unmistakably watching. Because in rooms like these, the real conversations happen between the lines. And sometimes, the most powerful sentence is the one you never say. The message arrived just after midnight. She was back at the hotel, shoes off, hair down, city lights flickering across the ceiling like soft Morse code. Her phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize, local area code. No name. One line, no introduction. You were right. We all saw it. We just didn't think you were the one who'd change it. Nia sat up. She read it again. Then, this is Rob. I was your waiter that night. Silence. She remembered him, the too quick smile, the water that never came, the clumsy pour of the wrong wine. And now, this. Another message came. They suspended me yesterday. Said it was temporary. I don't blame you. She stared at the screen. No emoji, no excuse, no fake redemption arc. Just truth, late, quiet, raw. Then, I've worked there 3 years, never had the guts to name it. Thought if I stayed polite, stayed useful, stayed forgettable, it'd pass me over. But when you walked in, I knew. We all knew. You didn't flinch. That scared them. She breathed. Not shallow, not deep, just level. Another ping. They say you were planted, like some kind of spy. Nia smiled a thin, private smile, a smile for no one but herself. Then, I don't need anything. Just wanted you to know. Some of us noticed. We just weren't brave enough to say it while you were still at the table. She didn't respond immediately. She let the weight of it sit. Let the message breathe. Let it echo. Because sometimes the words that come too late still matter. Because sometimes the silence isn't cowardice. It's calibration. Because being black in those rooms means knowing that even witnesses fear the light. Finally, she replied, Noted. Simple. Precise. Not to shame. Not to comfort. Just to record. Because the report wasn't over. The data kept coming. And now, even those who once looked away were starting to see. The report opened slowly, almost cruelly, like even the screen hesitated to reveal what came next. Celeste Warren sat at her glass desk, high above the city. Dawn slicing across the skyline like a razor of light. She took a slow sip of espresso and clicked open on the email that had been forwarded from the equity fund. Subject line, Immediate review. Requested. Internal incident summary. Location 0049A. She recognized the sender, and she recognized the name in the title, Nia Brooks. The woman from the networking summit, the one who moved like a mirror, quiet, still, but reflecting everything. Celeste began to read. Introduction, time, date, location. Then came the body of the report: observations, timelines, documented actions. At first, She skimmed years of executive experience, trained her to scan fast and filter faster. By page 3, she was sitting straighter. By page 5, her jaw had tightened. And then page 6, paragraph 4. Senior leadership within the Verite Group was previously notified about guest discomfort tied to racial bias and inconsistent enforcement of service policy. Internal messages show that this concern was dismissed. Notably, one of these responses was signed by Celeste Warren. The sentence was plain, not bold, not underlined, but its presence on the page was unmistakable. Celeste leaned back in her chair. She remembered the message clearly now. It had been short, light in tone. Something like one isolated complaint doesn't change the overall guest experience. She hadn't thought twice about sending it. Now it read like an engraved mistake. Her desk phone buzzed. "Carmen Liu from Langston Equity is on line 2, her assistant said softly. She asked not to be scheduled. She said, "I expect to be answered." Celeste didn't reply. She scrolled further. Evidence, screenshots, quotes. A photograph taken discreetly showing a server placing wine in front of Nia. You could see Nia's hand, her leather notebook, the edge of her sleeve. What you couldn't see was her face. Not yet. That came later in the summary paragraph. The guest did not raise her voice. She did not leave. She allowed the situation to unfold and captured it. The behaviors she documented were not accidental. They were consistent. And now, they are exposed. Celeste set her cup down. The coffee was cold. A second email came in, this one shorter. All leadership named in the report will be required to submit a formal response by Friday, 5 o'clock. She closed her laptop, but the words remained with her. Not highlighted, not loud, but unforgettable. The boardroom was colder than usual. Not in temperature, the thermostat read a perfect 72 degrees, but in something deeper. The silence. The shift. The way the chairs felt heavier. The way no one dared check their phone. 10 people sat at the long mahogany table of Verite Group's executive wing. 9 of them avoided eye contact. 1 of them didn't. Her name was Dr. Helena Sloan, independent board member, background in civil rights law, known for listening long, speaking rarely, and only doing so when her words could not be ignored. She held the printed report in both hands, neatly bound, marked, annotated. And when no one else volunteered to speak, she did something no one expected. She began to read aloud. The subject did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. She did not demand. Her voice was smooth, almost calm. She allowed the staff to act exactly as they would on any given day, with no knowledge they were being evaluated. What unfolded was not a single moment of misconduct. It was a sequence, a culture, a reflection. No one interrupted. Helena continued. To be clear, the issue was not poor service. It was differential service, selective warmth, conditional courtesy. The behaviors in question were not rooted in accident, but in assumption. A system of choices made again and again that framed black presence as suspicion before it was ever seen as humanity. Celeste looked down at the table. The words weren't fiery. They weren't cruel. They were just accurate. Helena paused before the last section. Then, slowly. The subject chose not to escalate. She chose not to publicly shame. She let the system expose itself by doing what it always does when it thinks no one is watching. This report is not a recommendation. It is a mirror. Silence. Then, finally, Helena lowered the paper. Her eyes scanned the room steady, unwavering. Now, she said, which one of you would like to explain how we're going to clean the glass? No one answered. The head of operations cleared his throat, but said nothing. The legal advisor opened her laptop, then closed it again. Celeste sat very still. Because in that moment, everyone in the room understood the truth. They had spent years perfecting a brand, but they had neglected to inspect the foundation. And now it had cracked, publicly, permanently, exposed. The email landed at 3:12 p.m. Not early, Not late. Just exactly when it needed to. From Nia Brooks to Equity Oversight Committee CC Verite Group, Executive Board Subject Final Remarks, Observation 0049A. It contained no attachments, no summaries, no pleas. Just a single paragraph, measured, unapologetic, quietly final. My presence at Maison Verite was never about punishment. It was about reflection. What I observed and what I chose to document are not isolated behaviors, but practiced habits. And like all habits, they reveal more than policy ever will. I do not require an apology. I do not seek corrective meetings. My report stands as is, not as a threat, as a record. That was it. No signature block, no inspirational quote, just one woman's still voice, delivered in writing. Across the city, in the Verite boardroom, Celeste read the message twice, then 3 times. It didn't shout, it didn't accuse, it simply stood, unshaken, black, intentional, and exposed in the most elegant way possible. The legal advisor looked up from her screen. "Well," she said, adjusting her glasses, "that's definitive." Helena Sloan nodded. She didn't send a rebuttal. She sent a ledger. At Langston Equity, Carmen Lou sat at her own desk, reading the same email. She smiled, softly, then forwarded it to the audit team with one note. "No further action needed," she said, everything. And indeed she had, because sometimes the final word doesn't require volume. It doesn't demand attention. It simply removes the illusion that anything else could follow. In a world obsessed with speaking louder, fighting harder, forcing power, Nia had done the unthinkable. She'd proven that stillness can be strategy, that silence can be structure, that observation, when sharpened, becomes action. And now, a room full of executives, attorneys, and strategists were left staring at a single paragraph, with nothing more to say. The awning was faded. The doorbell chimed like an old jazz riff, offbeat but familiar. And the sign above the storefront said simply, "Maya's Table." No gold lettering, no buzz in food magazines, no investment capital behind the concept. Just warmth. Nia stepped inside and let the scent greet her first cumin, thyme, sautéed onions, and something softly sweet like roasted yam or plantain butter. A woman looked up from the host stand. Mid-50s, locks wrapped in a vibrant scarf, smile wide enough to hush any tension at the door. "Welcome in, baby," she said, before Nia could speak. "You look like someone who knows what she wants. Table for one." Nia nodded. No questions. No pause to check the system. No glance at her skin or her shoes. The hostess led her to a corner table by the window. Light spilled gently across the polished wood. No linen. Just honesty. "This one's always been my favorite," the woman said. "You can see everybody, but nobody's looking at you." Nia smiled, not the poised, corporate kind, the real kind, the kind that starts in the lungs, not the lips. She sat down. A menu appeared without fanfare. No categories of premium or members only. No warnings about dress code. No commentary on her choice of table or company. Just dishes, written in simple script. Oxtail stew, cornbread with citrus honey, collard greens braised slow. No rush. The server who approached her table, a young man, maybe 23, skin the color of warm bark, greeted her like an old friend. "You good, miss?" "I am," she said, and meant it. He poured her water. Cold. Crisp. No hesitation. No invisible math calculating if she belonged. When he stepped away, Nia let her hand rest on the table. Flat. Still. She thought about the places where chairs were given grudgingly, where menus came with warnings, where eyes scanned before service began. Then she looked around. Here, there were only humans. Black chefs behind the counter. Black art on the walls. Black laughter rising from a table near the back, where 3 aunties were dissecting someone's peach cobbler with surgical authority. And still not one person knew who she was. Not the woman who wrote the report. Not the undercover guest. Not the one who made executives stammer. Just Nia, hungry, whole, home. The food came fast, not rushed, just timely. A plate of jerk salmon with sweet potato hash, and a side of sautéed cabbage that smelled like someone had cooked it with love and real memory. Nia took a bite, closed her eyes for a second, let it land, let it remind her. Then came the voice, "Hey, miss." It was the young server, still polite, still natural. He scratched his head, almost shy. "Sorry, but I don't mean to be nosy or anything. I see people all day, and I don't know, you move different." Nia looked up. Curiosity met innocence. No motive, just wondering. "What do you do?" She sipped her water, then set it down gently. Her smile was slow this time, not to soften him, but to steady herself. She could have said a title, could have listed credentials, could have told him how many executives answered her emails in under 2 minutes. But she didn't. Instead, she folded her napkin in her lap, met his eyes, and said, "I observe what people think they're hiding." He blinked. She went on, "I walk into places and pay attention to who gets served first, who gets asked for ID, who gets looked through instead of looked at." He nodded, a little slower. And then I make sure someone writes it down." He stood still. The dining room hummed around them, but in that little orbit, it went quiet. "So you change stuff?" She laughed once, light, not mocking. "Not always, but I make it harder for them to pretend they didn't know." He let out a breath, not heavy, just honest. "That's real." "So are you," she said. "You served me without a script. That's rarer than you think." He grinned, bashful. "I just try to be decent." That's where it starts. He walked away without saying anything else but straighter, taller, like someone had just handed him permission to take up space. Nia went back to her food. And for a moment, between forkfuls and quiet jazz in the background, she realized something. She wasn't just undercover to expose systems. She was here to remind others they're not invisible. And sometimes, the deepest justice comes not from punishment, but from planting memory in places where silence once lived. When she stood to leave, no one clapped. No one followed her out. No camera flashed. No chef rushed from the kitchen begging forgiveness. And that was perfect. Nia folded her napkin slowly, tucked it beside the empty plate. She left a cash tip, more than generous, under the edge of the saucer. Not because the service demanded reward, but because dignity deserved investment. The young server gave her a small nod from across the room. She returned it. Nothing big. Just recognition. Just, "I see you too." Outside, the wind had picked up. The evening was wrapping itself in indigo. Streetlights buzzed with the quiet hum of cities exhaling. She stepped out into it like someone stepping back into her real skin. Not the consultant, not the evaluator, not the one with the red pen and the quiet consequences. Just a black woman who had walked into a place, been seen, served with sincerity, and walked out without having to explain her worth. A victory, not in headlines, but in breath. Behind her, the door to Maya's table stayed ajar for a second longer than necessary, as if the room itself had learned something it wasn't ready to let go of. Nia didn't look back, not out of pride, out of clarity. Because sometimes the most powerful exits don't come with doors slamming or voices shouting. Sometimes, the echo is in what's not said. And as she walked toward her car heels tapping against sidewalk, coat catching wind, she whispered only to herself, "That's one less room pretending not to see us." No one else heard it, but that was the point. This story wasn't about being the loudest, or the most feared, or the most congratulated. It was about being unmistakably present, in spaces that once thrived on erasure. And in that presence, without force, without spectacle, something had cracked. Not loudly, just permanently. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.